All, all right, this is going to be the third and final video of the Chapter 12 notes. We have, looks like about 6 slides we need to go through. I'll try not to go too fast, as I've been told I've been going a little fast, but at the same point I want to try to keep the videos on the shorter end of things, and if you need to go back to get the notes, then you have that option. So we finished up with basically the bill becomes a law diagram on the last video, and we're moving into some of the processes of the congressional um, stuff. You know, how the members do their jobs, all that kind of stuff. And so one of the major concerns is dealing with the relationship between the president and Congress. President Obama over the last 2 years have been dealing with a Republican Congress, and then you are now going to have Trump with a Republican Congress, but still having some um, issues with how they're going to work with each other because they don't necessarily agree on everything on the way they want to do stuff. So basically, you either have them working together as partners or kind of the, you know, um, straight out of English, the protagonists. And so the president's attempt to persuade Congress that what they want is really what Congress wants. So they try to use their access to the media, press conferences, all those kind of things to try to influence Congress to be on the same page, which is a good thing, but at the same point, Congress can retaliate because of that as well. Presidents have many resources to influence Congress, if that is through appointments, cabinet positions, things like that. But public opinion is above all else a big one because it has been shown over the last decade or two that presidents usually have a higher approval rating than Congress. So presidents have a lot of leverage that way. But in order to succeed with these attempts, the president must win at least 10 times during their presidency or during their term of office. So for Trump in the next 4 years, he's got to prove to the American people that he is right compared to Congress at least 10 times, or the American people will start to side with Congress and start to doubt what the president's doing. Um, it's not a magic number, but it's one of those numbers that's thrown out there in political theory that the president has to win some of these arguments. And ultimately, residential leadership of Congress is at the margins. And what that means is that the people who are in Congress, usually it's more at the edges. It's not the diehards. It's not the diehard Republican, the diehard Democrat. It's more of the moderate Republican, moderate Democrat. And so it's one of those things that the president has to work and go after those people and kind of steer clear of the more party favored members of Congress. Now, I also mentioned before talking about members of Congress dealing with ideology, how to represent their people, their party, all those kind of things. And that's what we're looking at here. And first off is the political party influence. And many party leaders cannot force other party members to vote a particular way, but many choose to vote party lines a lot of times. There are some issues where members of Congress will always back their party. There are other issues where members of Congress will not go with their party depending on the issue. Obviously, controversial issues, abortion, legalization of marijuana, those kind of things, people will have their opinions, and sometimes those go against their party. The other area is basically the idea of, are you representing your people or are you representing yourself? And that's the constituency versus ideology. This usually is the prime determinant of members' vote on most issues, and it's usually their own personal ideology. What they believe is right, whatever they believe is the correct direction for the country or for a certain piece of legislation. As a member of Congress, when you get voted in, you believe that their vote to put you in that place is a backing of your own personal beliefs, so you vote that way. But from time to time, you do have to go with your constituency on most issues that are not salient, not the big stuff, not the stuff that is going to get you in a newspaper, on TV, those kind of things. A lot of times, legislators may ignore the constituency opinion and vote their conscience. Um, Most people are okay with politicians who vote their conscience, as long as they still back up the constituency most of the time. Most people have a problem who have a problem with members of Congress who only vote along their party lines. But on the controversial issues, those salient issues mentioned earlier, members are wise to listen to their constituents, because if it's a big thing, they gotta vote that direction. In the case of Dr. Ruiz, our House of Representative member, when it comes to veteran affairs, he better be on the side of veterans or he's going to lose out. Now, we've already talked about lobbyists and interest groups, but this is just a little bit more information. We talked about that there are over 35,000 registered lobbyists trying to influence Congress, those members of the committee staff and all that kind of stuff as well. And the bigger the issue, the more their lobbyists are. Okay, so environment, huge. Okay, if it's about oil, if it's about solar energy, if it's about saving a species of bird, whatever it is, there's a lot of lobbyists in that category. Lobbyists try to influence legislators' votes. Obviously, they can't pay them off. It's not some shady underground thing going on. But they are going to do whatever they can to try to make members of Congress see their point of view on an issue, even if that's constantly calling, emailing, or showing up in their office. Lobbyists can be ignored and even shunned and even thrown out by Congress. If a lobbyist is shown to be more obnoxious than necessary, Congress can take action to actually kind of basically kick them out. And people know, kind of get blacklisted, that they don't want to be heard from anymore, and people start to ignore those lobbyists. And usually that's a point where a lobbyist gets out of the business. But ultimately, it is not just the lobbyists, it's a combination of lobbyists and others that influence legislators' votes. It could be spouses, it could be staff members, lobbyists, constituencies. All of them are going to end up being an influence over members of Congress. No one group is going to be able to have all of the influence that they may want. So anytime you're talking about government, you got to bring it to democracy. And so with Congress, the founding fathers really wanted to try to meet all the things that were necessary. They wanted to make sure the big states were represented, the little states were represented, and when it comes to Congress, leadership and committee assignments are not representative at all, though. That's the bad part. The members of each committee is completely dictated by whatever majority party is in place. So right now that's the Republicans in both the House and the Senate. But at the same point, it's better to have the process of a bill becoming a law going through committees and many other people than simply having a small group that can do everything. But it is definitely not representative. Congress does try to respond to what the people want, but many will argue it could do a much better job. And some of those articles that we looked at in class for that jigsaw activity that we did in class kind of goes to prove that argument that Congress can always do a better job. Their job approval rating currently is right around 20%, so obviously not so hot. And members of Congress are responsive to the people. They are approachable. Senators in California, kind of hard to get a hold of. There's 30 million plus people. But our House of Representatives members, much more accessible. Dr. Ruiz even spends time here in Beaumont at the City Hall. So it is possible to actually get some time with them and for the people to make clear what they want, when they want it, and how they want it. And most of the times, members of Congress will listen because they would like to be reelected. So continuing with the idea of Congress and democracy, the idea of representation versus effectiveness. Anytime you have somebody who's taking your place in this process, it's not always necessarily the most effective way, but at the same point, is there a better option? And that's kind of what this is getting at. Supporters of Congress claim it's a forum in which many interests compete for policy, which is absolutely true. It's the old pet store idea with the little puppy fighting over every single person that walks in the door. They want attention. They want to get what they want. It is decentralized. No dictator, nothing like that. So there is no oligarchy to prevent comprehensive action. There is no oversight from some superior being to make sure things are being done a certain way. That's the good part of it. On the flip side of it, critics argue that Congress is too responsive to so many of the different interest groups and all that kind of stuff that policy is uncoordinated, fragmented, and decentralized. basically meaning that there's too many hands in the pot. Okay, anybody who's done any cooking, maybe at Thanksgiving or whatever else, you have too many people in the kitchen, things don't get done, and that's kind of what the argument is. And they also argue that it's so representative that it's incapable of taking decisive action to deal with difficult problems. If we're listening to everybody, all 320 plus million people in the United States, we are never going to be able to get anything done because there's too many different competing opinions about any one topic, and so it becomes extremely difficult to get anything done. And so our last slide here is, as a lot of the chapters we've ended on recently deals with, is Congress and the scope of government. Does it increase it? Does it shrink it? Does it keep the same? And the more policies, laws, bills, all that stuff that we've talked about goes through the process of Congress, the more ways it can serve their constituencies. So if Congress is looking at different stuff, they are serving the people more. It's more work for them. That's a better chance for us to be represented at the federal government level. The more programs that get created, of course, the government gets bigger. If that's the Department of Homeland Security after 9/11 or any other kind of program that gets introduced, it's going to make government bigger. There's no way around it. So as we keep asking for things, we have to understand government will get bigger, means more money, more bureaucracy, more everything else. And of course, contradiction in public opinion. As I mentioned, everybody wants government programs cut. We want the budget to go down. We don't like our deficit. We just want to make sure it's not the programs we want. And that's the number one problem that Congress is faced with, is how do we trim the budget, but at the same point not get rid of the stuff that we all want. We want a retirement plan. We like Social Security. We want insurance. We want all of these things, but there's not enough money to go around. And unfortunately for Congress, it's one of their primary objectives is to deal with all of those concerns and questions. So in summary, keep in mind members of Congress are the ones who make policy. The president signs it and they encourage it, but it's Congress who does the work. They have a sizable incumbency advantage. Once you're in the job, you get to keep the job. As I sit here and 14 years into teaching, I'm not worried about losing my job. A brand new teacher who started this year, they're petrified what'll come November or come May and June, and to see if they keep their job. Same thing is true in Congress. Congress is structurally complex. As you can see with your project of the bill becoming a law, it's not so simple. And lastly, individuals like the president, parties, constituencies, interest groups, all those things all will have some type of influence and effect on legislators' vote choices. All right, that's the end of chapter 12 notes. You'll have all this stuff done and be ready for the test, which will be on finals week.